Tēnā koutou katoa, no mai haere mai. Welcome to the re-recording of the online webinar to launch the carbon emissions calculator on the Climate Action Toolbox. We've had to do a bit of a re-recording because we had a few technical issues with the recording in the live webinar. So what we are doing now is just playing or going through the some of the first parts of the webinar, and we'll stitch it with the second half, which was recorded, so that we can share a complete record of the event. So my name's Phil Jones. I lead our climate related work at SBM, and today, as I mentioned, we launched the calculator. So what I'll do is I'll run through what I did earlier, which is a bit of background, and also share a video on the of the new calculator on the toolbox. So collectively, the two parts of the recording will cover this. So apologies for slightly disjointed nature of the recorded version, but we'll crack on. Cool. So what I talked about earlier was, I think many people know that New Zealand is a nation of small businesses, SMEs. They represent 99% of all businesses in New Zealand, have 50 or fewer employees, and in fact 97% have fewer than 20 or 20 and fewer. But collectively, they have a very important role within our economy, clearly, and contribute about a third of our GDP. We don't have data on how that activity translates to carbon emissions, but a really good rule of thumb is that it's broadly equivalent to the GDP contribution. So a similar proportion, about a third, to our carbon emissions. And if we factor in many sort of smaller farms, non-corporate farms, then that figure is actually likely to be much higher. So again, there's sort of some reasonably good understanding, I think, of some of the challenges facing smaller businesses in terms of taking climate action, sustainability action in general. And we've got quite a lot of experience at Sustainable Business Network on these and sort of understanding and working with businesses who experience these types of issues. And really, the Climate Action Toolbox has been designed to overcome several of these key challenges, one of which, the first one listed, is time and resource constraints. So typically a problem for many smaller business managers, owners, is they are very busy people. They may, it may be cost might be an issue, or sometimes it's the perception of the cost of taking action. So probably a bit of a combination of both. Another important one, and this is one that we really have focused on in terms of how we can help through this toolbox, is lack of knowledge and understanding. It can be quite a confusing landscape for businesses who don't know where to go to get quality information that they can trust, and in a single source. So the toolbox is an attempt for those businesses starting out to have that good quality information that enables them to trust the advice that they're being given online. Inadequate drivers and motivation. This is changing, but at the moment, there are limited drivers for them to change. But through things like carbon pricing, through the the demands of some of their suppliers and customers and other stakeholders, that is becoming that there are pretty strong business drivers for making change. Complacency. Often we hear, "Well, I'm too small to make a difference." It's the easy kind of reason, excuse to give. It's not, doesn't mean it's not valid. It's still valid, but it's if we all took that attitude, then nothing would get done, basically. And obviously another one that's of concern to some is taking action and maybe getting bad publicity because they might not have taken the perfect action or whatever. So that collection of kind of the key challenges which SMEs typically face. So as I say, that led to the development of the Climate Action Toolbox for Business that was launched last year, 2021, at the end of March. And at that time, we had this wonderful group of partners who basically funded the development of this toolbox and the work related to it. Since then, we've had Spark join. So on the initial slide that started this presentation, they were included on the list of partners. So the toolbox has been a great success. It's exceeded our expectations so far. And just to illustrate that, in the 15 months of being since going live, 25,000 unique visitors to the tool have been logged on our system. So very strong sort of endorsement that there is a demand out there for this type of tool and product. One of the particularly strong areas of interest has been around measuring emissions. The most visited information page in the toolbox is our information page on measure your carbon footprint. So it was a strong signal to us that the next version of the next main version of the toolbox should include a carbon calculator. There are many carbon calculators in the market. What sets the one that we've developed apart, we think, is that it's very much integrated with an action plan component as well. So it kind of provides a single tool to do both. Not to say that these other calculators don't have a role to play, they still do, and in certain, for certain situations, they're highly appropriate. But this one is certainly, as I say, strong user interest for the toolbox to include it. So the version 2, which will be shared in the next part of the recording, the original recording, will go through the climate action tool, the calculator, the new calculator. I provided, I just went through this as well. So why know your emissions? There are some, some key benefits from going through the process of establishing your emissions. It does help. It gives you an added focus, particularly on your energy use. As we know at the moment, that is, can be a cost pressure point when prices of petrol, for example, have gone up 50% in a little less than a year. Carbon pricing is now higher, rightly. So that's also contributing to all energy which is, has carbon emissions associated with it. So a single litre of petrol is now, there's now about a 20 cents component from the emissions trading scheme component, which is factored into the price we pay at the pump. So there's plenty of, hard business nosed reasons for better managing energy and fuel use. Increasingly, it's interesting for you, for your people, your teams, especially younger people. But our experience in our work with a whole range of businesses is actually it's not just the younger people. There's many of all across the whole age spectrum for whom this matters. Increasingly important to your customers and suppliers. We'll have some contributions later from BNZ and NZTE, those who work directly with some customers, some businesses, and they can will give their reflections on that. Helps to be future ready. Regulation is only going in one direction, albeit the regulation of small businesses is relatively pretty light in this area currently, but it may well change. The tool, the calculator, enables you to obviously show your progress over time, so you can actually see the impacts of any actions that you're taking over time. And of course, when I say feel part of the team, it's this collective, Aotearoa New Zealand combined effort to tackle our carbon emissions and contribute to the climate solution we need. I often share this slide. This is a wonderful business based in Auckland, conventional printing business, 100-year-old business. They used to be called Soil Print, they're now SCG. They've recently gone through a brand change. This is them picking up an award as Climate Leader a couple of years ago at our awards. What's really impressive about what they've done is over the course of 13 years, they have had a consistent approach to measuring every year their carbon emissions and developing and refining an action plan. And included in that action plan is a lot of investment in a whole range of things, including new equipment that is much more energy efficient. So collectively, their efforts have resulted in these impressive figures. So their emissions have halved in that period on a like-for-like basis. And they've saved just under $500,000, a net saving. So that's after the investment that they've made in those emission reduction actions. So all in all, it kind of shows what can be done from a conventional business. There's nothing special about what the sector they work in. In fact, it's probably a difficult sector to work in, but it was purely the drive of a few key people in the business and that consistent approach over time. I'll quickly go through this just to get everybody up to speed on what the basics are of emissions calculation. So essentially, we've got a number of different activities. For each activity, there is an emission factor, essentially a conversion factor, so which converts the number of units of whatever the activity and translates it into an emissions figure. So for example, a couple of examples here of petrol and of air travel. So those are the two emission factors for those different activities, and collectively based on the activity units on the left there, the emissions associated are on the right. And the convention is to report in what we call carbon dioxide equivalent, which is basically all different greenhouse gases have different warming impacts, but they're all kind of normalized into a single metric, which is this carbon dioxide equivalent value. So this is the full set of activities covered in the calculator. When I go through the walkthrough in the second half of this recording, we'll touch on a bit more of this in detail, but these are all the emission factors or activities covered, and each of these has an emission factor. Those emission factors are taken from a report issued by the Ministry for the Environment. Annually, they do an update of the emission factors. This includes a vast range of emission factors. There's hundreds, literally. What we've used in the calculator is a subset of about 28. And we've used the most appropriate ones that are going to be relevant for most, typical businesses. So very much the target audience for this calculator is kind of the average or average business doing an average type of activities. It doesn't include some of the more specialized, activities that might have unique types of emissions associated. This slide just reinforces or confirms what the calculator is and what it isn't, which sometimes it's quite useful just to quickly go through. So it is a free calculator. We have quite a few questions coming up in the Q&A later about whether it's free or not. It's free. It's suitable especially for businesses starting out. That's the target audience we've designed it for. And especially for smaller businesses, although we know that many larger businesses who are starting out have also and are using it, and it is useful to them. So it's not exclusively a small business tool. It's based on those New Zealand emission factors I mentioned. And another key point is this already happens, and we really encourage this to continue, is it's shareable. We encourage large organizations who might be more advanced in their own climate action journey, but for them to share it with their network of typically smaller businesses who might not have done anything in this regard. So we've got our partners sharing it, a formal funding partners, but we've also got many other organisations within our network and beyond who've helped share it, and we really value and appreciate that that contribution. It's really, really helpful. What it isn't, so this is important, and again, some of the questions that came up in the Q&A later touched or were around this topic. It's not, it isn't part of a certified program. So there are several certified programs in New Zealand, and typically they are used by businesses that have stronger drivers to take action, or they want to get a badge to show that they have a carbon status, you know, they're carbon neutral or even carbon positive. The key thing about our calculator is the results aren't verified, not yet anyway. We're looking potentially into how we could incorporate a certified or a verification service within the tool, but we haven't at the moment. Therefore, the results, the emission results coming from the calculator can't be used to go and buy offsets and claim a carbon status, because that data hasn't been verified. And that's a really important thing in terms of, you know, communication and avoiding greenwash. We have very good providers in New Zealand. Toitu and Ecos are examples of you know, service providers who do carbon accounting certification. They have certified programs, and there are others that offer, you know, standards-based verification process. So there's lots of opportunities for those who are more advanced to kind of use those great services that are out there as well. Okay. What I'll do now is, and this was the final thing before we switch into the original recorded mode, is I'll share the calculator, the video that we put together for the calculator. This was produced by the SBN team, credit to Phil Crawford, who produced the video, and also Georgia Brown, who is the commentator on it. So let me just switch my screen. No, I didn't press record. No, I didn't press share sound, which I've done before. So fingers crossed this.
Small businesses can now measure and reduce their carbon footprint using the Climate Action Toolbox. This free online tool provides an easy step-by-step guide to reduce your emissions. Go on to create an action plan customised for your business. We've now added a calculator to help you work out where your emissions are coming from. It just takes a few easy steps. Select an initial 12-month period and enter data about your energy and fuel use, freight, business travel, waste, and more. Find tips and tricks to smooth the way. Make sure to add your own notes. They could come in handy. Save and come back to make updates anytime. Now you can see your total emissions and where they can be reduced. These results will help tailor your action plan. Plus, you can track your progress year by year. The Climate Action Toolbox has been trusted and used by thousands of Kiwi businesses since its launch in 2021. Join them and start taking action today.
Excellent. So hope you enjoyed that. A shout out again to this collection of partners. As I mentioned earlier, this includes Spark, and all those others listed there. Without their help, we could not have done what we've done collectively. So really appreciated, as I mentioned before. So that's the end of the re-recording. What we'll now link into is Ram Kumar from the business.gov team, who's kind of co-led the development of the toolbox with myself and others over the last couple of years. He is going through the action pathway of the Climate Action Toolbox. So I think that there's a slight, we miss a bit at the beginning of Ram starting off, but Ram is a business manager within the business.gov team, and he will go through that. And then later we'll be having contributions from Alex West from BNZ and Jackie Oldham from New Zealand Trade and Enterprise. So I'll sign off here. Phil Crawford will do some wizardry with stitching two recordings together. So hopefully it will be a reasonably smooth experience. So apologies again for the technical issue in the original recording. Ka kite anō.
The landing page also has a quick preview of all the results that you would get from the action pathway. And you also have cool case studies from about 50 businesses listed on the site. We are always looking for more businesses to join our case study list. So if this tool has a positive influence on you, we would love to hear from you. Either you can contact us through the business.gov contact us page, or you can leave a rating and leave some feedback along with the tool. And we would love to get in touch and add your business to our case study list. Going to the action pathway, if you choose to start with your action plan, you will be presented a short self-assessment to understand where your business is currently at. So I'm going to wear the hat of a cafe in Wellington, a typical small business that we interact with. So the first question asks about where your business activity takes place. So as a cafe, I would choose possibly the retail or hospitality venue option. And the second question talks about how you travel for work. Predominantly our staff don't travel to work, so I would choose the don't travel option. The third question is about transporting stuff to and from your business. Obviously, the cafe business will have a lot of materials flowing in and out. So yes, our core operations will require transport of goods. And yeah, we are in the business of manufacturing coffee. You could say make coffees. So yes, the cafe business will be involved in the manufacture of coffees or making of coffees. And as I said, if a Wellington business would possibly choose in Wellington here. So nice and easy assessment. Once you finish it, you'll be presented with a set of high priority action areas that you could focus on. As you can see here, a cafe will find the most opportunity to reduce its emissions in its buildings or in the transportation of its goods or in making coffee. We also show a set of low priority areas which are probably not relevant to your business, but you can still choose to access those areas and find out what you can do. There's an option to change your assessment, your scenario in your assessment by clicking on the change scenario at the top. Once you pick an action area, you will be listed a set of step-by-step action guides within the action area. On the right, you can see certain actions which are marked as quick wins and certain actions which have high impact versus medium impact. So you can choose. Obviously, there are a lot of actions you can pursue here. We would encourage you to start with something that's most critical to you and keep building from there. So a cafe business probably might be interested in understanding their energy. So I'll choose energy. And as you can see, once you click on an action, you'll be presented with a step-by-step action guide. There are 3 actions you can take on the guide. You could either add an action to your plan, or you can mark them complete or not relevant if that applies to your business. And there are specific step-by-step actions along with links from our partners about taking some of those specific actions. Just for the demo, I will add this to my plan. So once you go through the relevant actions for you and add guides to your plan, you will have an option to go to your action plan. So you can click on engage with the call to action. We also have introduced a new login feature, so you can take your results with you, and you can see your results across devices or across. Um, so you can basically take your results with you. So you can either create a business.gov account, or you could use your Google, Realme, or Microsoft accounts. For the purposes of this demo, I'll just log into my account. Once you sign in, you'll be presented with an option to save your results. So you can take those results with you. Once you save the results, you'll be taken to a results summary page where you can see your climate action plan, and which you can then export, or you can go back to your impact areas and add more actions to your plan. So yeah, that's about it for the user journey with the old tool. I'll now hand it back to Phil for him to take you through the emissions calculator. Back to you, Phil.
Marvelous. Thank you very much, Ram. That was really smooth. Thank you so much for doing that. Yeah, so I'll run through the, I'll just stop your screen share and I'll now start my own. Yeah, so Ram's obviously showed you this. What I'll do is go through the calculator pathway. I'm conscious of time, so I'll scoot through this as quickly as possible. Very keen to allow enough time for questions, and I appreciate there's lots coming in, which is really cool. So this is the initial page, which basically gives some information about what is involved in this process, and it also mentions that the information that is entered and stored is obviously conforms to the government privacy policy. So you can be rest assured that there's a high level of security over the data. So starting calculations, the important first step in the process is to define your reporting year. And the tool makes a recommendation that you align it with your financial reporting year, which is the kind of standard approach. So what I would do if, let me assume I'm SBN, the Sustainable Business Network. I'll run through a quick example based on our situation. So our reporting period end is an April to March year. So once you've selected your reporting period, as the video showed, you get these different data entry options. So what I'll do is I'll run through a few of these and put some data in for some of these data entry screens. They're all of a similar design. So what we have is some guidance notes. So we're very conscious that there are some sort of technicalities around getting good quality data. So we provide some tips on how to do that, both in these guidance notes, and also in these little tooltip pop-ups as well. So let me just put some figures in here, which are broadly aligned with what we actually our actual experience at SBN. So we use electricity in our office. We don't use any gas or anything else, any of those other energy types. We do have a hybrid vehicle, and we do use some petrol in that. So let me just put, we don't use that much actually. Let me put a more realistic number in. 250. 250 litres. We're quite sparse in our use of the car, especially in recent years. But there are the other key fuel options there. Outsourced freight, we don't have any significant freight requirements, so I won't put anything in here. And then we can go to the next screen, which is business travel. Now, this is one where we do have activity. Included in this is where our staff might use their own personal vehicles. So we'll put some kilometres in there of use. So this is based on, I should have said that each of the data entry fields obviously defines what unit type it is. So whereas with fuel users based on litres, here it's based on kilometres that the vehicle travels. So I'll put in 1500 for that, which is quite low. And then further down here, there's other options. So you can put in, spend on taxi use, for example. And further down, there's air travel, which until recently has been a very significant part of our footprint, and is still pretty significant, even though we've been traveling much less in recent years. So let me put some figures in here. Again, these are just illustrative rather than actually accurate in terms of our experience. The next one is waste to landfill. And here there are two options about whether your waste goes to a landfill with gas recovery or without gas recovery. It makes quite a bit of difference. You can see the emission factors here and different contributions. It's a third less if you have a landfill with gas recovery. And there's some information in the guidance, for example, on where you can get good quality information on to identify whether your waste is likely to go to a landfill with or without gas recovery. We're quite, we like to think when we do manage our waste pretty well, especially when there's so much working from home at the moment. So let's say we do about 5 kilograms a week, which is actually a bit more than I think we do. So I'll click that. And then this final screen is another screen. It's a bit of a bucket. And the only one we've got listed here is working from home, which we've done a lot of in the last few years, of course, and we'll continue to do in future years as we have more hybrid working. So we had something like 3,000 days work from home last year. We've also included an option for the user to enter any other emissions data that they might have estimated from another source for another type of activity. So we don't have anything specific to enter here, but that's an option for users to put in if it's relevant. And also, I perhaps should have mentioned earlier that each field has the ability to put a comment against each of these units. So that would be especially valuable when you're just using this free format field. Good. So then the next button to click is show my emissions. And this takes you to the results summary screen, which Ram showed you earlier. So that does include your climate action plan that you may or may not have created so far. So here's our total emissions, and it shows the breakdown. There is also the option to add your gross revenue, which gives a kind of carbon intensity metric, which is sort of quite a standard way of trying to normalize and compare different businesses. Obviously, a raw carbon emissions number is quite difficult to compare when you're, different sized organizations or you're working in different sectors. So the carbon intensity identifier gives you some means of beginning to normalize. So let's put a bit of a hypothetical figure in here. Got to keep it reasonably accurate. Never know if our accountant's watching. So about, I think we're a bit more than that now, but that then translates, the 2.5 million translates into a carbon intensity value. So we've got all the key data loaded up now. The next key thing to do is, and once we're happy that we've completed everything, there is the option to go back at any time and refine your calculations. But once we're happy, we can mark it as complete. And that's important, and this will show that that means you basically can't then edit. So what I'll put is climate emissions results, and save that. Hopefully a thing will pop up to say, there we go, and that's been saved. Let me just do that again, and that's interesting. It should be showing complete. So we'll check up on that. That's not what I was expecting. So I will look into that. I'll also mention that you can, as the video showed, you can put in data for additional years, conforming to the same reporting year sort of series that you've already used. So once you've put in that reporting year, it's really critical to keep accurate, or keep to that same reporting year series. And then you can go through the same process to add emissions data or activity data and calculate your emissions. And then, as the video showed, you can then obviously compare years over time. Once your results are marked as complete, you can then export the results, and you get a PDF report of all the emissions results that you've entered and are complete. Excellent. So let me stop my share. Cool. I hope that wasn't too quick, and you can view it in your, at your own pace when you get the opportunity. I'd also really like now to invite Jackie and Alex to join us. Guys, do you want to show your lovely faces and unmute yourselves?
Kia ora.
Hi.
Fantastic. Who would like to go first?
Yeah, happy to. No problem. Rightio. So yeah, I'm Alex West, and I'm a senior product manager for sustainable finance at Bank of New Zealand, and I'm one of two BNZers that has been contributing to the development of the Climate Action Toolbox since the start. The other being our head of sustainability, Emma Brosnahan. We signed up to be part of the project because our customers need a solution for calculating their emissions that is simple and on a platform that they can trust. So the advantage of also being on the biz.gov platform is that all New Zealand businesses can utilize it regardless of who they bank with. BNZ is aiming to support all of our customers with their efforts towards sustainability and become the bank of sustainable transition. So having the information to understand customers' operational emissions will help us tailor our efforts towards funding and solutions that will see businesses continue to operate and grow. And we're excited to work with our customers to provide sustainable finance product offerings and guidance. And the toolbox is right at the heart of supporting this for our small to medium businesses. So yeah, happy to take any questions in the chat as well, or sorry, in the Q&A, not the chat. And yeah, I hand over to Jackie.
Thanks, Alex, and kia ora tātou, everybody. I'm Jackie Oldham. I'm a sustainability advisor at New Zealand Trade and Enterprise, which is New Zealand's international business development agency. NZT is really proud to partner with SBN and help make the Climate Action Toolbox as relevant as possible for businesses, including the exporters that we work with. We recognise that many businesses have resource and time constraints and competing pressures and urgent challenges like supply chain and rising costs. So a tool like this that is digital, self-service, accessible, makes the entry into the world of sustainability and carbon emission reductions much more workable for companies. At NZTE, we're seeing increasing awareness and demand for climate action in international markets, and exporters are starting to see regulations and requirements around emission reduction plans and other environmental and social credentials. So the launch of the calculator is a really important milestone, and it'll be a really valuable tool against the guides and the action plan for businesses to be able to estimate their emissions profile and begin to make really good data-driven and informed choices on where they focus and they prioritise their reduction efforts. It's great to have a simple tool that people can just use to dip their toe in the water and see what this carbon footprinting is all about. And that's what we're encouraging at NZTE for our customers to do as a starting point. So we're looking forward to working alongside SBN and other partners to make this tool as widely used and as impactful as we can. Kia ora.
Wonderful, thanks both. Yes, that's really good to hear from you both. And again, thanks for your input to the program over the last couple of years. So now we've got to go into Q&A. We're running slightly over, so what I will say is that if we will probably just run a bit longer, just so we've got there's so many questions coming in. So hopefully you'll be able to stay a bit longer and we'll get through as many as possible. Those we don't get through, we will endeavour to answer after the event. So thank you very much. There's a fantastic range of questions coming through, and I'll bit of a potluck really in terms of what I pick out. But as I say, we will endeavour to answer them if in due course. So where do I start with this? There's a technical question. How does the calculator's outcomes translate into scopes 1, 2, and 3 emissions? Yeah, that's basically the formal carbon accounting rules have an approach where different activities are classified as scope 1, 2, and 3. The activity data that we collect does have in the background an association with each of the 3 scopes. We don't include it in what we provide to the user at this stage, both on screen and in the report, because we just don't want to make it overly technical at this point. But we recognise we kind of future-proofed it by including that within the database. So we are capturing the data, we're just not using it at this time. Alex, maybe one for you, and you know, particularly it'd be interesting to understand a bit more in terms of how you as the bank might incentivize your customers to use this tool and take climate action. You know, what sort of opportunities do you have there?
Thanks, Phil. Yeah, we're looking at a range of ways that we can utilize the data that will come from this to understand how we can work with our customers in terms of either supporting their growth in terms of more sustainable operations, or support other customers who are looking to transition away. Now, that looks like a couple of things. With our sustainable finance offerings, we are looking at understanding how we can wrap certain product types around this, maybe a sustainability linked loan or a green loan, potentially even green or social loans. Those in themselves can come with potential discounts in terms of supporting customers with cash flow. And then long term, we're going to be looking at how our overarching sustainable finance framework starts to feed into our bank's risk appetite, and how that can play a part in terms of making the structuring of debt or the feasibility for businesses that are looking to operate in this direction a lot easier, and transitioning the bank itself towards customers that are operating along these lines. So lots of exciting change in terms of what we're planning on doing in that space, but it's certainly going to make it easier for customers when we can understand a little bit more about what they're doing in terms of their emissions.
Brilliant, thank you. A related point and some questions that touch on this subject is and it's obviously highly relevant for BNZ, and that's around the mandatory climate risk reporting. You know, sometimes it's called TCFD, which is the international approach to climate risk reporting. And I know that that is one of the motivations behind, you know, for BNZ, because they have statutory responsibilities now. So just to quickly answer that question, you know, the tool does, you know, enable large organizations who have these statutory reporting requirements to begin to collect data from their customer base, which within the mandatory reporting, they do have an obligation to begin to understand what climate risk they have within their customer you know, network. So that's fair to say, Alex, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think initially we're going to look to utilize this tool in terms of upskilling our bankers around the discussions they're going to be having with our customers in terms of emissions reporting. Help customers with guidance around, you know, what they need to be looking at. A lot of our customers probably aren't aware of what actions they need to be taking in terms of their emissions, or possibly even really basically what are causing their emissions. And so this is not only going to help guide them, but it's also going to be a precursor to providing the information we need around their emissions long term.
Cool. Great stuff. We've had a few questions around the entry of data, and I think it's worth just responding to those. It is obviously a manual entry, and it does require the business, the user, to collect information and enter it. So it is based on entering annual aggregated data for each of the different activity data items that the tool includes. So there is a bit of work for businesses. It's, you know, it's a bit of the holy grail in terms of how do we get to a system whereby you know, you can get quite a good quality emissions measure through a minimal amount of input. And I think there's lots of people working on that, and some, you know, there's some very good innovation happening. Our tool at this stage is quite conventional in terms of the data entry approach we're using, but we're definitely keen to stay in touch with, you know, as methods improve and are more automated, and particularly around linking through to, you know, financial accounts and spend. So that's definitely an area that we're keeping a close eye on. Ram, one perhaps for you in terms of, you know, what was the motivation perhaps for business.gov to host the toolbox on your platform? You know, whereas, you know, it's quite a departure from the tools you've currently got, which are kind of in more conventional business support areas. Just to perhaps you could provide a few comments on that.
Sure, Phil. Yeah, as you know, sustainability is a key area for the government in terms of providing support to small businesses. And we thought that the Climate Action Toolbox is a perfect way for us to start providing tools and resources for small businesses in the area of sustainability. And yeah, in terms of hosting it on the biz.gov site, yeah, over the years, we've built good trust with small businesses. We are having a good reach into the small business community. So partnering with experts like SBN and our private and public sector partners gives us the validity to build a tool that small businesses can trust. They already have so most of the small businesses have already visited the small business.gov site, so they know the website, they trust the information that they see there. We believe this partnership can help us make a start into that sustainability objective of the government and provide the support that small businesses need in this area. And using our reach, we hope we'll be able to reach a good proportion of small businesses, understand the feedback, and continuously improve the product.
Great, yeah, and to touch on that, you know, in the first year, we've noticed that because of the massive reach that the business.gov channels have, whenever the tool has been promoted through those channels, we've seen a very significant increase in Toolbox users. So that's really cool. We're delighted to have made that decision, nearly a couple of years ago now. Conscious of time, but I know that most of you have still stayed on, so I'm going to take that as a kind of signal that you're happy to keep going for a few more questions. I'll maybe keep to 3 more questions, and perhaps there are more areas of questions because there's some themes coming through. There's been a few questions asked about more specific information or support that the tool might provide in particular sectors. And this is really topical because we, as the partner group, the sort of strategy group, is looking at where we go next with the tool. And one of the key areas we're looking at is to provide more specialized content that's going to support particularly specific sectors. So, for example, that could be construction, where there's obviously tens of thousands of small businesses in that sector. Hospitality could be another. Tourism could be another. So we're actively looking at how we could develop a function that provides that. So thanks for those great questions. I hope I've answered that in a generic way. Jackie, in terms of NZTE, I know that your job has been to work with specifically support exporting businesses. How do you see, what role do you see the toolbox playing in how the NZTE support managers can work with their export businesses that they are connected with?
Yeah, thanks, Phil. Good question. We see this as such a good starting point for companies and for our teams, our customer managers, to work alongside them to actually get an understanding of where their business is at the moment in terms of their climate action, where their biggest sort of areas of focus should be, and how to prioritize that and make an action plan. As I said earlier, internationally, there's regulations, there's compliance, but there's also opportunities for New Zealand companies and exporters. And so if they can work out where they're at the moment, where they should be focusing on, what's realistic, what's achievable, what's relevant for their business and for the international markets that they're trying to get into.
Brilliant, thank you. Just to the final question theme, I guess, or area theme, which I'll try to cover. And there've been a few questions around reporting and monitoring progress. So we are developing a facility whereby data can be extracted, to provide to larger organizations to perhaps be part of their own internal emissions inventory production. So we're looking at that, and specifically that's an area that BNZ are interested in doing, both for their mandatory reporting requirements and other needs. So that's another sort of area we're looking to develop. And there's been a couple of questions around, okay, how do you monitor progress against targets? And that's another area that we're looking to incorporate some new features around setting some targets. So obviously at the moment, the tool doesn't provide that, but that's clearly something which we expect could be very useful to businesses as they take more steps down their climate action journey. So that will definitely be an area that we're looking to, both provide incentives for how businesses can, to use the tool, but also to, report against targets that they set themselves. Brilliant. I know I haven't answered all the questions, or we haven't answered all the questions. Apologies for those we haven't got through. We've still got 39 in the open column. I know we've covered some of those. As I mentioned, we will try and get back to you where we can. So thank you very much again for those questions. And thanks, Alex, Jackie, and Ram for contributions. It's been excellent to have you here. So thank you again for joining. Cool. Right. Wrapping up now. Numbers are dwindling a bit, so we've still got 170 online. But it's my pleasure just to wrap up and say thanks again for you for joining. This has been a wonderful collaborative project to date, and it will keep going. As I say, we will be developing new features over time. So thanks again to our funding partners who I mentioned earlier. And also, again, to DNA for the great work they did with developing the tool. I guess the key takeout message that I'd like everybody to take away is how might you or your organization help with the kind of the mission to get more smaller businesses taking climate action. We really welcome any opportunities you might have to share news about the toolbox. It's free. We want it to be used by as many businesses as possible. The partners who are involved, they've got no protection over, who might get hold of this. So any banks would love any help in, sharing with your own networks and in all the other sectors. At the breakfast launch this morning, the Minister Nash used the analogy of we're all like dropping drops of ink onto a big blotting paper and having that diffusion effect. We thought it was quite a neat way of thinking about how each of us can be that drop of ink, helping to diffuse the message we want to give across the business landscape in New Zealand. So that's my my key message or takeout request to everybody. Final things to wrap up. SBN runs many events, so we keen to get as many people joining those events. You can see all our events listed on our events page on our website, sustainable.org.nz. We've got a couple of workshops coming up, so please look out for those, including another one on climate action and taking kind of going to the next level with climate action. So please look at that. I think that's on the 6th of August. And most importantly, this is a really big year for SBN. It's the 20th year of SBN's existence. It's the 20th years where we've run the annual SBN Sustainability Awards, or Sustainable Business Awards. So in each of those years, Rachel has been at the helm. So a massive thanks to Rachel for amazing energy and endurance over that period. So this year we've just opened 4 applications for I think it's about a dozen awards this year. One of those awards is the Climate Action Leader Award. So we're really keen to get as many businesses, having a look at that award and seeing whether they might be keen to apply. It is very easy to apply in the first stage. So please check that out. Again, you'll find the details on our website. And as Ram mentioned, we're always keen to hear the good news stories or stories of businesses taking climate action, whatever they're doing. They don't have to necessarily be in, one of the leaders, just more of those everyday businesses taking action. That's another key thing we want to promote. Cool. Let me just wrap up with the karakia. Thanks again for joining us, and look forward to seeing you at another event very soon. Unahia, unahia, unahia ki te uru tapanui, kia wātea, kia mama te nako, te tinana, te wairua, ki te ara tangata. Ko ia rā e rongo whakairihia ake ki runga, kia tina, tina, uie, tai ki e.